So that's the Dubai International Financial Centre. I've been blessed to be the Chief Executive and Registrar of the DIFC courts for about 10 years. And I've taken over recently the role of Chief Executive of the Dispute Resolution Authority, which solves all your problems. Litigation, arbitration. Even if you die, we've got a wills service. And if you want to learn more, we have an Academy of Law. I'm a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Network for Justice. I'm a visiting fellow at Oxford University, and I take over the presidency of the International Association for Court Administration in September. So I know a little bit about courts. And I should do, because when the Dubai International Financial Centre started back in 2004, it's had a meteoric rise. It's now one of the top 10 financial centres in the world. Woo! But when the DIFC court started in 2008, we're now one of the top 3 commercial courts in the world. London #1, Singapore #2, and DIFC #3. We're the only court in the world that can solve problems in less than 4 weeks. 90% of our claims under 500,000 dirhams are solved within 4 weeks. So we know a bit about courts, but we also know about innovation. First court in the United Arab Emirates to have a woman as a judge was? Come on, have a guess. Ah, brilliant, well done. First court in the region to have a pro bono scheme so that people who couldn't afford justice got access to justice. First court in the region. First court in the region to have a small claims process to help the SME sector get paid. Yeah, you're getting sort of the hint now. And what we've done is we've always looked at what's happening, and we've tried to understand how can we respond to what's happening in the world, how can we respond to what's happening in Dubai. And I want to tell you now that in my view, personal view, the world as we know it is coming to an end. Because we're just coming off the back of 30 years of a globalizing world. From 1979 to 2008, the world has been globalizing. We've been fed the Kool-Aid that exporting jobs, buying in talent, and making the rich richer will be good for society. We've believed in the global mantra, but it stopped in 2008. The world has started to deglobalize. Do any of you know this poster? This is a poster that was used to demonstrate to the British public that these lines of immigrants were coming to steal their jobs. This is the world in which we live. No longer is there a desire by countries to plug into a globalized world. Brexit, Trump and his wall, Catalonia, Germany not being able to form a government. Even in the Middle East, we're seeing fracturing states. Relationships of hundreds of years are breaking down. And has this ever happened before? Have we ever had a globalizing world before? 1929 to 1979, the world deglobalized. So let's look back to that first era of deglobalization, and let's look what preceded it. What caused this fracture of the world? And what happened as a result? Because I think that if what happened then is what's happened now, we can probably predict what's going to happen, because history does not repeat, but history does echo. And if we go back to the first era of deglobalization, it started with massive environmental crisis. Smoke, poisoning of water. That was 1929. Massive environmental crisis now. Back here, a rise of huge hegemonic power. Hegemony of the Brits taking over the world, taking India from 50% of the world's GDP to 15% of the world's GDP. Now, depending on your politics, the new hegemonic power is China or America. Back here, the rise of militant Islam. Right now, the rise of militant Islam. Back here, the rise of populism and racism. In 1870, the Ku Klux Klan was moribund. By 1920, it had 5 million members. Populism and racism now. And we saw political units disintegrate. The Ottoman Empire, the Russian Empire, even the United Kingdom fractured in 1923. And now we have Brexit, Catalonia, and the rest. So if we work on the premise that the world deglobalized on those precursors, the world's deglobalizing now. What happens when a world deglobalizes? Well, there's some good news. Before you think of the Second World War, that's like a bad thing. There's some good news about a deglobalizing world, because in a deglobalizing world, the poor get richer and the rich get poorer. So the rich people in the room will be really upset by this, but those with a social conscience will see there's some benefit. But what happens in a deglobalizing world is extensive government regulation. Control the border, control the flow of capital, control the flow of people. Inefficiency of the global supply chain, ineffectiveness of the global supply chain, a decline in global trade and FDI. Now you're going to say, but is that happening today? Yes, it is. We saw a significant decline in global trade in 2009, unexpectedly, some rebound in 2010, but since 2010, we have seen 6 months on 6 months a decline in global trade. And we're now moving into negative territory. Global trade around the world is starting to decline. We are in a deglobalizing world. The world as we know it is coming to an end. The nation-state tariff, border, boundary, barrier is rising and will continue to rise probably for the next 40 years. The world's coming to an end. Aha! Oh my goodness! How are we going to save ourselves? Don't worry, China will save us. China will save us because it's announced a Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative is a 5 trillion, I mean the numbers vary, but roughly $5 trillion US program. 900 billion US dollars of that program is just on infrastructure. Pipelines, roads, railways. $900 billion. It goes across 64 countries. In 64 countries, $900 billion. You think to yourself, wow, that's a lot of money. It goes across 64 countries, which the Financial Times has said has an infrastructure deficit of 26 trillion US dollars. China is saving starving nations with this program. It's not making fat cats fatter. It's putting bread on the table of people who can't afford to eat. And this Belt and Road Initiative, this globalizing initiative, this zenith of a world that needs to globalize, this zenith of hope that we might be able to get investment into countries so desperately in need of investment, spans 62% of the world's population, 3/4 of the world's global energy resources, and 30% of the world's economic outcome. It is the largest supply chain the world has ever seen. It is the end of China's hide your strength and bide your time philosophy, because now the tiger is roaring and the rest of the world is listening. And for the first time in our lifetimes, China has become an enabler of hope for billions of people. So on the one hand, we've got this huge deglobalizing force, build a wall, stop the immigrants, drive down tariffs, and on the other side, we've got a world desperately in need of efficiency and the supply chain to get $5 trillion spent in countries so desperately in need of support. We are at a confluence of two massive, massive powers smashing together. If you remember Jason and the Argonauts, it's those rocks coming together and smashing. And that power and imperative to globalize on the Belt and Road against a deglobalizing world. And the one thing we can be sure of is there's going to be rough times ahead. The one thing we can be sure of, if you look at the picture on the left, you see these poor people cowering. cowering between the powers and the force of the ocean. And I think it's fair to say that that's not a good place to be. The best place to be is in the lighthouse. It's that place of safety. And I think one solution China's looking at is building hubs around the world. Obviously, for the Middle East, it's Dubai and DIFC. For Eurasia, it's likely to be Astana and the AIFC. London will tell you it needs to be the hub for Europe. But that's not the answer. The answer to a world which is falling apart from a global trade point of view, which is becoming more and more inefficient in the physical world, where there are storms brewing, the answer, I think, does not lie with building lighthouses. The answer lies by getting away from the physical storms. Has everyone seen the film The Matrix? Yeah? Who was the actor, the main actor? Keanu Reeves. What was the name of the main sort of protagonist? You know, the guy who was fighting Keanu Reeves, the cool guy? Mr. Smith. Okay. All right, now the tough one. Who controlled the Matrix? It's coming. Who controlled the Matrix? The challenge is, we don't know, right? We don't know who controlled the Matrix. Who controls the blockchain? Who controls it? Like, who's in charge? No one! No one! There must be a court, right? There must be a court in the blockchain to solve problems, right? Must be.
There's algorithms which is you put in when you're just creating the blockchain. So, and this algorithms will do the job. There's no like people or someone who can influence in the blockchain. That's the main idea of the blockchain.
Oh my God! No court? I don't believe it. What we've created now is like the Matrix. The storm is brewing in the world with Mr. Smith and Keanu Reeves, but actually what we're looking at is how we use the blockchain to drive the efficiency. How do we take the inefficiency of the storm and use the blockchain to take it away? Well, it's obvious. That's what the blockchain does. The blockchain it doesn't just change borders and boundaries. It erases borders and boundaries. It doesn't just do away with tariffs, it deletes tariffs. It is the solution to a world which is desperately in need of globalization. But people don't trust it. Right or wrong? Talk to the lady on the Clapham omnibus or the man in Texas and say, put all your money on the blockchain, you'll be fine. And the answer will be, I don't trust it, right? Now, they don't trust it because it doesn't exist as a jurisdiction. It's like the Matrix. It's totally virtual. Okay? So they don't get it right. No court. Impossible. Now, I asked a group of blockchain experts like yourself, I said, talk to me a bit about the legal jurisdiction of the blockchain. They said, don't worry, Mark. And I'll quote them. Don't worry, Mark. It has a distributed jurisdiction. What? What? The need for legal jurisdiction of the blockchain is so much that the Aragon project announced the creation of a legal jurisdiction on the blockchain, and in the first 15 minutes after the announcement, how much did it raise? In millions of dollars? Have a guess? 5? 10? $25 million in 15 minutes. That's how much people are craving to have a physical, legal jurisdiction on the blockchain. Because we know the amazing, amazing things that the blockchain will do to drive efficiency, to help the world globalize, to make sure that assets are distributed fairly and evenly around the world. But I think right now, if I were to ask the question, can current legal systems and regulatory systems cope with a future on the blockchain, what would your answer be? Anyone say yes? Excellent. So we all agree courts and regulators cannot cope with a world on the blockchain. But I hope we all agree that the world needs a world on the blockchain. So, now, I love predicting the future. It's fabulous. They did a survey in 2011 of futurologists and pundits. The average correct success rate of a pundit is 27%. All right? So you all can be futurologists. But this is where I think the future's going to go. Courts can't afford to wait to reinvent or to reimagine, because it's happening already. Courts can't afford to wait. When a court tells me, and as I say, I'm associated with courts all over the world, and they say, Mark, we've done the most amazing thing like technology. We send out SMSs. I say, what? They say, yeah, well, like we have a computer program and it sends SMSs to the lawyers. Oh, wow, I say. But it's like moving the pictures on the Titanic. It doesn't really deal with the issues that we need. It doesn't deal with the citizen of the kingdom of Asgardia who turns up in court. It doesn't deal with blockchains. It doesn't deal with cryptocurrencies. It doesn't deal with hash graphs. It doesn't deal with a world without borders. It doesn't deal with a situation which Professor De Filippi is dealing with in Harvard, where you have a contract on the blockchain, a smart contract, and that contract has the law, the regulation, and the contract terms embedded within it. It becomes the judge and jury of the contract. It adjusts the currency flows as it sees fit. Impossible, right? And it is a way away. But I just read about AlphaZero beating Stockfish 8. Anyone know what I'm talking about? AlphaZero was a blank sheet of paper. I mean, it was a computer, right? But it had nothing in it. And all they did is they loaded up the rules of chess. No history. Just the rules. And they let the computer work out how chess worked. This is December last year. So AlphaZero has nothing more than the rules of chess. 4 hours later, AlphaZero beat the world's most sophisticated chess computer. 4 hours. 4 hours it learnt every possible permutation of chess, and it beat the world's leading chess computer. This is the kind of world that we're living in. And I think we're going to get to a world in courts where technology can do much of the work of a judge. And what they don't do, the private sector will take. I think it's very clear, though, that if business becomes global and business moves on to the blockchain, we need to make sure that courts and arbitration centres are able to support them. And I think we need to make sure that they stop acting like the anchorman. Your average court and arbitration centre thinks like this. I know it. I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big thing. Right? So the arbitration centre will say, hey, we're in Singapore. We're the best. You should come to us. And Dubai says, no, we're the best. You should come to us. And London says, no, forget them. Come to us. And Hong Kong says, no, we're the best. Same for courts. We're all doing it. Okay, great. Right? Nice. But the reality is it doesn't help a world. It doesn't help a world that's borderless. It doesn't help a world that's agnostic to language. It doesn't help a world on the blockchain. And if courts don't start to understand that the world is a decentralized and that they have to be decentralized, then I think courts and arbitration centers are going to fall by the wayside. And part of that is connectivity. Courts and arbitration centers have to connect. They have to connect physically and they have to connect in the virtual world. They have to be able to deal with smart contracts on the blockchain, legal systems and arbitration centers that don't exist in the real world. And I think if the leading courts can come together and they can work with business people like yourself and understand what you need in a virtual world, then I think we have a chance. We have a chance of the blockchain seed growing into an oak tree. We have a chance of the world trusting the blockchain enough for the blockchain to take out the inefficiencies of the deglobalizing storm. And that's why we have set up the Courts of the Future Forum. It has academics, judges, lawyers, business people, coders, privacy experts. I mean, just think of privacy, right? We'll come on to privacy. Just think of privacy. The European legislation now says an individual can ask for their data to be deleted, right? Okay. What if the data's on the blockchain? Like, how do you delete it? So who's not compliant? If we don't have institutions that understand how the blockchain works, if they don't pass laws that are relevant to the future of the supply chain, it won't be efficient. So we set up the Courts of the Future Forum. Its mission, and I plagiarized Star Trek, its mission is to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new ways and new ideas, and to boldly go where no court has gone before. Thank you. And I'll finish with this. Where the blockchain is the antidote to the poison of a deglobalizing world, where the blockchain sits at the epicenter of the global economy, where the blockchain facilitates the spread of opportunity and wealth around the world, it will only be governments, institutions, and courts that can see the future, disrupt, and deliver on the needs of business on the blockchain that will survive the storm, number one, and be able to power the global economy. Thank you very much.